So you just got your brand new Sony ZV-E1 and you're wondering, how do I get the best video quality out of this thing? Well, you're looking at it right now. This is shot on the Sony ZV-E1 in 10-bit color in S-Log3. In this video, I'm gonna show you a few quick settings to get you up and running to make your videos look great. The first thing we're gonna take a look at is not the most, don't skip. It's not the most exciting, but it's gonna save you a tremendous amount of time and make you really efficient. Tapping menu here on the camera, and we're gonna go up to the star up top. That's my menu. And what you can do, there's a ton of menu items in here, but this My Menu, you can actually customize and grab menu items and put them into this hot button up top. So the things that you're gonna frequent the most, you can add them here. How to do that? Under My Menu setting, you click on Add Item. You can go through the entire menu here and you can grab what you wanna grab and add it in. Next, let's take a look at our shooting mode. Out of the box, the camera, we're on tab 3 here. So the red video camera icon, tab 3. Down here, number 4, shooting mode. Over here in shoot mode, the camera's gonna come in what's called intelligent auto, which is fantastic. The camera does a really good job of making the footage look good. So if you don't know your settings or how to get exposure, this is a good setting to use. But if you're wondering why you can't change your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed, it's because it's an intelligent auto. So you go to that shoot mode, come down here to manual exposure, and when you click that, you'll have full control over things like your aperture or your shutter speed. Let's talk about one of the most exciting new features in this camera, that auto framing, that center tracking, the one that everybody's talking about. So still in tab 3, all the way down here on number 12 under shooting option, auto framing settings. This is where you can adjust how the camera is actually utilizing this feature. When I click on this auto framing right now, I have it set to off, but when that is turned on, that's when the camera is going to take over and do this auto framing that you're seeing on screen now. Framing operation mode, auto start, or you can make it a delay if you want to. I just have it on auto start. Crop level, I found medium to be the best. This is how much the camera is actually cropping in on the footage. I found medium to be really nice to work with. And then framing tracking speed, you want to match this to the action in your shot. So if you're just slowly moving around, I actually found that right in the middle around 3 is great. If it's going to be something that's significantly faster, maybe fast-paced fitness or something, and you want it to be able to track a little bit more rapidly with how quick you're moving, you want to set that to fast. Video settings, this is a really important one to get the best image quality out of this camera as possible. Still on tab 3, spending a lot of time here today. File format, this is where we can choose between 4K and HD. There's a lot of codecs that you can use here. If this is new to you, this is intimidating, I'll explain it really quickly. XAVC-S 4K, HS 4K, and SI 4K. These two are your HD options, your 1080p. We're gonna be shooting 4K with this camera 9 times out of 10. So XAVC-S 4K. XAVC-S is Sony's standard codec. It's the one that's the most common. They are fantastic quality files and the file sizes are pretty small. When you go down to XAVC-SI, this is arguably the best image quality that you can possibly get, but the file sizes are also significantly bigger, and I haven't found a huge difference, to be honest with you, between SI, S, and HS. HS is its H.265 file, so you have to have a special computer to be able to handle that footage, so be careful if you're using that. But XAVC-HS is a really nice video quality with a small file size, so XAVC-S, smallest file size, SI, best quality, biggest file size, HS is kind of the combination between the two. I'm typically shooting in XAVC-S 4K. Movie settings. Frame rate, you can choose here. If you're shooting slow motion, you're gonna go with 60, and then 30 and 24 are more of a preference. I'm gonna go with 24p, and then your record setting. The camera will come out of box in the 60 meg 420 8-bit, but that's not why we got this camera. We got this camera because of its amazing color renditions, and that being that 10-bit footage. So you wanna bring that up to 100 meg 422 10-bit. Slow motion, exciting stuff. On top of the camera, you're gonna toggle over to S and Q. Once you're in there under this third tab still, image quality down here on S and Q settings, you're gonna be able to change how you want your slow motion to be rendered. Record setting, just like before, we wanna make sure that we're using the 10-bit color out of this camera, not these 8-bit codecs. So using 10-bit for our best color possible. Frame rate settings. On the left here, you're gonna wanna match this to your timeline. So typically with slow motion, if I'm shooting this shot right here at 24 frames a second and I wanna put some slow motion on that same timeline, I want this number to match the other footage that I'm shooting. If you're shooting in 30, you would bring that up. And your actual frame rate here, this is the frames per second that you're actually capturing. The camera does a nice job on the bottom, like X2.5 slow motion at 60p. It's showing the amount of slow motion versus your record setting that you're getting. So if I'm shooting in 24 therefore I'll be in 60. In the summer, in a couple months from the time of making this video, this camera will have a firmware update that's gonna give us 120 frames a second in 4K, so this will have a new option of going to 120, but for now I'll keep it at 60. Audio, camera has a really cool audio option for the internal microphone here, so let's get off of tab 3. I'm kidding, we're still on tab 3. Down here on number 6, audio recording. Make sure your audio recording is set to on. That means the camera will actually capture audio. Audio record levels, you're gonna wanna adjust these so that you can see the meters on the top there, that you want your audio typically bouncing between -12 and -6. So for me, that would be right about there. And then wind noise reduction, make sure you turn this off. We don't want the camera guessing if there's wind and maybe botching your audio. So use the provided dead cat if you're using the internal mic on the camera, and if you're using an external microphone and you're in the wind, make sure you have the dead cat on there. That's gonna be your best bet, but I set that to off. Microphone directivity, right now I have this set to auto. This is really cool, and this only applies to the actual audio on top of the camera, the actual microphone there. It's not gonna apply to a different mic that you're using if you're going external. It can record audio, it can kind of pick up, and you can set it to the front and say, I want the audio, maybe I'm vlogging, meaning the audio source is coming from the front of the camera. I want it to pick up from the front, or you can say all directions. Maybe you have the camera in a room and you want the audio from a bunch of different people all over the place. You want it set to all directions. And then rear, if I'm behind the camera, I want the audio picking up from the rear. I have it set to auto, let the camera guess and choose, but if I know what I was doing, I'd probably set this to where I knew the audio source was coming from. Picture profiles, hot topic amongst Sony camera users. We're finally off of tab 3, I promise this time. Over here on tab 4, the purple one, let's go down to item number 5, color and tone. Picture profile. So once we're in here, you have a bunch of different options you can scroll through there. I wanna just talk through a few things here. If S-Log3 is intimidating to you, this camera does have S-Log3 in 10-bit color, which is an amazing picture profile to use. It's my go-to. If you don't know much about S-Log3 and that intimidates you, what I want you to do, under gamma, you're gonna select S-Cinetone, and then under color mode, want that to match that S-Cinetone color mode. That's gonna be your best picture profile if you don't wanna use S-Log3. Looks fantastic coming out of camera. People love it for how well it handles skin tones. It's a really nice looking image. But if you do wanna use S-Log3, then you're gonna select S-Log3, and under color mode, you wanna select S-Gamma3 Cine. Those two go really well together, and that's gonna give you your best looking image with S-Log3. I have a few things I wanna say about white balance. The first thing, we're on tab 4 down here on number 4 for white balance, priority set in auto white balance. The camera will come out of box in this auto white balance standard. I think the camera actually, the tones and the colors look a lot better when you bring this to white, but I'll put a few examples up on screen here and you can see what you see from my examples. I'd encourage you to test that out on your own and see what you like. This camera also has the ability to do something that's called auto white balance lock. What I've done to make this really efficient, I'm on the bottom tab here, this briefcase under Operation Customize. Not gonna take y'all through all of my custom settings today, that'll be a future video. You can see them on screen. If you wanna steal that, you're welcome to do so, but this first one here, I've actually custom mapped. When you get in here, you can just click on what it has there and you can go through and you can see where I've got this. It's on the second tab here, white balance, auto white balance lock toggle. And you can select what you want to custom map it to that button for the camera. It's not gonna come out of box like that. What this does is when the camera is in auto white balance, it's gonna get the white balance of the scene, a really important thing to make your colors look good if you don't know the exact white balance. And then when you tap that button, it's actually going to lock that white balance. So maybe somebody comes in with a different color shirt, it's not gonna change the white balance and change the tones, it's gonna lock it when you touch that button. And then maybe you change the scene, go somewhere else, you want the camera to get the white balance again, you untoggle that, give it a few seconds, let the camera get the scene, lock it off again. That way your colors are consistent until you want to turn that off and go to a different scene. It's something I found that makes a humongous difference for making your tones really consistent. Image stabilization. This camera comes equipped with some of the best active stabilization that we've seen out of a Sony camera. Back on tab 3 here, I knew we'd make it back. On item number 8, image stabilization. So for steady shot, we have a few different options here. This is gonna be the most stabilized footage. So if you're hand holding and you want it to look really smooth, you're gonna choose that. It's gonna crop in a lot more than the other ones, but the added benefit you get is a really stable image. Active is a little bit less stable, then that dynamic active still really good and much less of a crop. Standard is the least amount of crop and it's gonna be your least amount of stabilize, and then off is no stabilization at all. So for me, if I'm hand holding or I'm vlogging and I have a wide enough lens, I'm gonna go on dynamic active. And for like B-roll, anything handheld, I'm gonna try to use that as much as I can. If I have to, meaning the crop's too much and I can't get the shot, I'll go to active. And if I'm on a tripod, I'm gonna be on standard or off. I've saved the best for last and we're almost there. One more before we get to my favorite setting. So autofocus, manual focus. We're on tab number 5 here. I'm gonna scroll over to AF, MF, and under autofocus, transition speed, and autofocus subject shift sensitivity. Like this video if you're surprised I got that first try. Say that 10 times fast. Okay, autofocus, transition speed. The camera's gonna come out of box at a higher setting. These two settings together, I'm gonna back up here and show you the other one. These two settings, if they're cranked up, and you're wondering why your camera is pulsing around, this is why. If I'm shooting something fast moving in slow motion, I'm gonna crank these up because I want the focus to keep up, the autofocus to keep up with that action. But if it's like a vlog shot or a shot like this that's just locked off, I'm actually gonna crank these all the way down. And that way the camera's not gonna focus and hunt around. Trust me, even though it says locked on and slow, the autofocus is plenty fast enough to keep up with a shot like this. All right, my last setting and one of my favorites is at the very bottom. It's not one people talk about often. This was first introduced, I think, in the A7S III. In the briefcase at the bottom here, under Operation Customize, all the way down here, different set for stills / MV, MV meaning movie. You can read what's on screen there. Essentially anything that we check off on this next screen is gonna be completely independent if we're in video mode or photo mode. What does that mean? It means that, and out of box, none of these are checked, so you wanna go in and do this. You wanna check all these. This means, like, for example, let's take white balance. If this is unchecked, when I'm taking photos, and let's say I have it in auto white balance, and I take a few shots, and then I kick back over to video mode, and I want my video maybe to be a white balance of 5600, it's gonna stay in auto white balance from photo mode, and I gotta go back in and change it. Same thing for everything. Typically when I'm shooting photos, I'm changing aperture, shutter speed, ISO, white balance for sure, picture profile. I'll have a picture profile and I'm shooting video. When I go shoot photos, I don't want a picture profile. So I want to take it off when I shoot photos and then go put it back on. It's a waste of time. If you select all of these, your settings, at least the ones that are an option here, will be completely separate. You set them whatever you want in photos. When you kick back to video, the camera will stay where it was the last time it was in video for all these settings. Huge time saver, and by far one of my favorite things in these new Sony cameras. I have a lot of videos planned for this exciting new Sony ZV-E1. Maybe camera of the year, 2023, who's with me? I'm gonna deep dive into some of those settings that we ran through today. There's some things, some layers we can go a little bit deeper on. I'm gonna look at the best ISO settings for the camera, how to get the best out of your S-Log3 footage. It's a scary term. If you're new to photography or new to videography, and S-Log3 is something you want to use, you don't know how, I'm going to break that down. I'm going to talk about how to get the best photos out of this camera. I think it's a pretty capable photo camera. We got to talk through some settings there. Anyways, a lot of videos planned for the channel. So if that's something you're into, subscribe down below so you don't miss them. Like the video if you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. See ya.